Wandering Winder here with the third and final day of previews for Dominion Seaside 2nd Edition. My initial reactions to said previews. Um, Unlike with other sets, because they've been, like full sets, this one is just 9 cards, so once I do the final previews today, that's it. That's all the new stuff. Um, yeah, so let's just jump into it. We've got Pirate here, which surprisingly is not an attack. Yeah, anyway, Pirate. Action duration reaction. Costs 5. At the start of your next turn, gain a treasure costing up to 6 to your hand. And then the reaction bit is when any player gains a treasure, you may play this from your hand. Oh, that's any player. Interesting. So that includes you. So my initial reaction was, you don't think about the reaction bit, then this card is like it gains a gold, and it gains a gold next turn, which goes into your hand. But this is going to miss the shuffle quite a bit. That's not great. Um, when do you want to be gaining gold? Like it doesn't. Okay, so it doesn't have to gain gold. It can gain any treasure that costs up to 6. But what else? What other treasure are you going to get? Now there are treasures that are better than gold. Don't get me wrong. Like you could get a counterfeit, you get a crown. But the thing is, if I wanted a counterfeit, I probably would have bought the counterfeit instead of this, right? I mean, maybe there's some case where that's not true, but I think it's usually going to be true. Or Horn of Plenty, same thing, right? Um, Maybe ill-gotten gains, you would want some number of these before you would go for ill-gotten gains. I'm not sure what that number is. It's not a ton, I have to imagine, because you don't want to get too behind on the cursing. But yeah, this could maybe do something there. But for the most part, whatever other like specialty treasures, I think you would mostly just rather get those. Just as a way to ramp payload. I mean, I guess this is replacing Explorer. Sometimes you got Explorer just because you needed to ramp payload of a couple money every turn you were drawing. This doesn't do that every turn. Um, it only does it every other turn. Even if you're reacting to yourself, right? You're not going to be able to do it every turn. Usually, the way you're going to be able to do it every turn is if somebody is gaining treasures on your opponent's turn, right? You reacted on your opponent's turn, and you've and then you get to play it and gain the treasure in the same turn cycle, right? Because yeah, that's how that works, I think. Anyway, it's it's kind of like a reap, right? You get the gold in your hand instead of in play. I don't. That is a little bit different. So I guess this maybe also works with trash for benefit to some extent because you have that gold, so you can apprentice it or broker it or remodel it or what have you. Um, but mostly, I think this looks like something you would do in money. I don't know how good that is for money. Gaining golds is good. And you could have probably, like, a lot of the time you're going to have been able to have bought the gold anyway, right? Like if you had a silver instead of this, and this costs 5, so you could have probably had a card that's better than silver. If you had a silver instead of this, you could have bought the gold. I guess it wouldn't go into your hand, and been an extra card in your hand. So I mean, this is some value over that, but compared to other 5s, like, is this really better than? I don't know. It's probably better than merchant. I don't know. But I guess the being able to react it if you gain a treasure otherwise, like to your own treasure gains. Maybe makes this, it almost makes it like a non-terminal gold gainer to hand, kind of to hand, with the duration thing making it miss shuffles. I don't know. Maybe this is good for money. I'm going to guess it's not really like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer. This is a big money enabler. Um, so I'm going to guess it's pretty weak. But yeah, it probably helps money, maybe some trash for benefit stuff more than other stuff. I don't think it's that strong. Um, let's move on. Corsair. Okay, so 5 cost action duration attack, plus 2 money at the start of your next turn, plus a card. Until then, each other player trashes the first silver or gold they play each turn. Okay, let's look at the non-attacky business of it first. The non-attacky part, yeah. 2 money, next turn you get an extra card. That compares to merchant ship, that compares probably a little unfavorably to merchant ship, although there are going to be cases where it's better. There are definitely going to be cases where it's better than merchant ship just to have the card. But the thing is, those cases where, again, ignoring the attack part for a moment, those cases where this is better than merchant ship are probably not cases where you wanted merchant ship to start with. And I don't think that you want this card either in those cases. Just for the normal non-attacky bit. Um, so yeah, that's not exciting. So we have to look at the attacky bit. And I mean, if an opponent is relying on silvers and golds, this attack is pretty brutal. Um, so it looks pretty good against money largely, I think. But and in some cases, if you're building more, you still need silvers or golds as a decent chunk of your income. In some cases, you don't. If you can get around not having it, I'm going to imagine that the Corsair isn't that important. Um, there may be a little bit of a dance sometimes where, well, I would normally play with some silvers and golds, but my opponent could go Corsair. But eventually, like, they're not going to go Corsair, and like timing when you get Corsair as a deterrent, the possibility of getting Corsair, whatever, I don't know. The card that comes to mind here is Merchant, because Merchant you actually want to have a silver, but maybe Storyteller is affected as well. I mean, there might be reasons you would want silvers or golds. I mean, there are a lot of reasons you might want silvers or golds. So yeah, looks really strong against money that wants silvers and golds to be a big part of its econ. You just play this semi-consistently. The 2 money and the card isn't that weak, and being able to trash part of their payload, like a money decks, it's probably a fairly significant part of their payload. Every turn is pretty good. And actually, like sometimes what they should do is not play any silvers or golds, right? If I have 3 coppers and a silver in my hand, and then I have to ask myself, is it better to have a 5 cost, or is it better to have 2 silvers? I guess the answer is probably usually to have the 5 cost, so you're just going to get them anyway. So yeah, but I mean, so let's say they have a gold and 3 coppers. Well, it certainly doesn't make sense to buy another gold, trashing a gold. That doesn't do anything. So better than that would be to play the 3 coppers and buy a silver and not play the gold. But in some cases, they might rather have the 5 than the gold. Although, like, If they got a gold to begin with, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, so the attack is seems pretty pretty powerful if they're relying on silvers and golds. Otherwise, there might be some cases where the attack is really not hurting them very much at all, and theoretically could be helping them. Right? They needed some initial silvers to hit 5, and now they're happy to get rid of them. You probably want a different 5 in that case than this, so that probably just doesn't really matter. I'm wondering how good this is early, right? I go silver, silver, or silver peddler, or whatever, to hit 5. Um, and you do the same, and I get this. And you don't have many silvers, and you kind of need them to keep hitting 5. It's probably not that good in that case. I mean, I just think most other 5s are going to be better, unless you're eventually just playing money where you're getting a lot of treasures. Like this is like a souped up noble brigand, I guess. That's probably the best comparison. You don't steal the silvers or the golds, but you're more likely to actually trash them. It does more for you when you play it than noble brigand does, and yeah, there's just it's very good against money and not so good otherwise. Um, yeah, it doesn't give the coppers, but I don't think that's the reason you go for Noble Brigand very often, although, it comes up. Um, yeah, this is like a souped up Noble Brigand, I think. Uh, it's fine. I don't love the design because just those decks that want silvers and golds tend to not be that strong to start with, and so now you have something that really punishes them hard. Like, did you really need that? I don't think you needed that. This is probably going to be weak because people don't go for those decks very much anyway. Um, but when it's strong, it might be super strong. Let's move on. Sailor. 4 cost, action duration. Plus an action. Once this turn, when you gain a duration card, you may play it. At the start of your next turn, plus 2 money, and you may trash a card from your hand. So, this is giving me major transmogrify vibes, for the early game anyway. Um, the bottom bit seems like the main reason you go for this card. The next turn, you get 2 money and you get to trash a card, which is a lot like an early transmogrify, right? You play it, it does nothing for you that turn, it gives the action back. The next turn, you trash an estate and you get 2 money. Now, instead of having a silver, you just have the 2 money. So that's got pluses and minuses, although I think it's mostly minuses. Um, and yeah, but I mean, I don't think I like this design either so much because it's Transmogrify has this issue where it's much better on turn 3 than on turn 4. Turn 4 it misses a shuffle. You don't get the trashed estate in the shuffle. You don't get the gained silver in the shuffle. This has turn 3 you don't you get to trash the estate, you get the money, you get to buy a much better card. I mean it's the same thing, right? You get to buy a much better card. You Yeah, it's very similar, I think. And that's not great. That's not great. I haven't run the math on what the chances are that you can buy another one of these the turn you play it on turn 3 or 4. I'm going to guess it's not super likely because you need 4 money out of your 4 cards, which is either exactly 4 coppers or 3 coppers and a silver, or 2 coppers, a silver, and an estate. Um, if you can get another one, that's probably fine. This probably also it's going to get better if there are other durations around to pick up. Um, especially cheap ones, I guess. Although even more expensive ones are going to make this more useful later, right? You play this and you buy a wharf, and you get the wharf in play immediately if you want the wharf in play immediately, which, sure. I guess you could do tactician things with this. Cute. Outpost, yes. Wharf, you probably would rather play it right away than have it in your deck, although not always. Um, yeah. Hireling, great to get in. Yeah, anyway, that's like a nice little upside. Turn 3 or 4, you're going to have some chance of getting another one of these, but it's not going to be massive. Um, yeah, like it could even snowball harder if there is like a fishing village. You play this on turn 3, and you buy and play a fishing village on turn 3, and now you're suddenly hitting a large amount of money on turn 4. Um, yeah, I don't know. It just strikes me as very similar to Transmogrify, and I guess like the biggest differences are you get a lot less flexibility in turning thing into other thing later in the game with this than you get with Transmogrify. This doesn't store yourself out of your deck in the mid game where it's not doing much. You can't mill provinces with this. On the flip side, you do get to trash a state. You do get to trash hoppers with this, which is its biggest upside, I think, compared to Transmogrify. But it just seems like very similar to Transmogrify, and a big turn 3, turn 4 is a huge difference kind of card. Um, yeah, and that's it. There are a couple of small erratas. Treasurer now cares, I think, about cards that you gain in your buy phase instead of buying them, which mostly doesn't matter, but I guess could come up with like Horn of Plenty or something. There's probably some other ways. Lighthouse is marginally different on when it defends you. I don't remember the details. It's pretty much the same. There's again some edge cases in terms of how that works. I think it's not a while. That's what it is. It's not a while this is in play anymore. It's an on-play effect, which I guess matters if you're gonna bonfire your lighthouse or something, but doesn't much matter, I don't think. Um, yeah, so I guess someone asked if I could talk about the cards that are leaving. Um, yeah, we can talk about that a little bit. So blank card leaving means every card, and this is honestly probably the biggest thing. Oh my god, well, it's probably not really. But like every card is a little bit, from every expansion, is a little bit less likely to show up because there's one more card around total. Um, Fantastic. Great. There's not much to comment on there. Embargo leaving, I mentioned the kind of captain issue, whatever. You can't captain a blockade, you can captain an embargo. Okay, who cares? Not being able to embargo like potion cost card, it doesn't really work with blockade. It just doesn't matter that much. It could come up. The thing I'm gonna be sad to miss out is the embargo pileouts where you embargo curse and then buy curses and then suddenly the curse pile emptied. But I mean, okay, you can't actively use the embargo to your advantage because it gets you curses, which is good for you, which I liked, and it's one less 2 cost, which I guess probably messes up the young witch math and whatever a little bit, but whatever. I don't think this is going to matter too much. You have an extra workshop, like the cards that are gaining seem generally more important, although I guess there's some exceptions, like Ghost Ship. Um, yeah, Ghost Ship It was a pretty strong attack. We've got less discard attacks now, and the Ghost Ship one in particular was different. Um, People didn't like Ghost Ship. I understand why. Okay. Navigator hardly did anything. We're getting more durations overall. I guess that's worth noting. Fewer non-durations, more durations. Um, that probably affects your commands a bit. I guess. I don't know. Navigator missing. You didn't get Navigator. So Sea Hag, yeah, Sea Hag going away. Um, yeah, Sea Hag's going away. I don't know. Sea Hag did less for you than this Sea Witch is gonna do. Um, so like Sea Hag probably slowed your game down more than Sea Witch is going to, even though Sea Witch is stronger. Um, yeah, it probably also makes some of the cards a little bit less good. Like there's some cards that countered Sea Hag kind of directly. Your lookouts, your farming villages, your upgrades, junk dealers and stuff. But that's like really marginal. I mean, all the cards that are missing, it's really marginal because they hardly ever showed up anyway. Pearl Diver, whatever. Explorer, I mean, we talked about kind of what you would do with Explorer before. Um, you knew this stuff with Pirate. I don't know what to tell you. You could play the Explorer more often, I guess, but yeah, I don't know. Pirate ship missing. People will be happy because they get annoyed by this card, but it's mostly a blank card. This is probably also a blank card largely, but this one actually discourages money, and this one did not generally, I think. I guess capitalism gets a little worse. And Ambassador, which is probably the big one. So Ambassador was really strong, and you'd go for it almost always. And it was super annoying in a lot of cases, and really advantaged the first player, but also really advantaged playing with it well. You're not going to have any of that with Sailor. Sailor is just, I think, much closer to Transmogrify, and yeah, games are going to speed up because Ambassador slowed them down, where you flung stuff and they flung stuff and you flung stuff and they flung stuff. And Sailor is really mostly a speed you up thing. You're just thinning and getting some money with it. So, yeah, overall, what are the changes that we're going to see? This is going to speed you up. This might actually slow you down because this attack is more prevalent, but mostly this was a blank, and I don't think it's going to slow you down much. I don't think this is going to have much impact. This maybe speeds you up if Pirate is stronger than I'm thinking. This is, I guess, going to speed you up because Pearl Diver wasn't doing anything, but not that much. This, I think, should speed you up a fair amount. Although this is worth going for more often, this slowed both players down, whereas this is actually helpful to the person who gets it. Uh, this is going to speed you up because this did nothing, and this will sometimes do things. This will speed you up because this was an attack that really slowed you down, and this is, well, it might have some quasi-attacking properties and making your opponent not want to get stuff. I think it's largely only going to make them not get marginal stuff, and more than that, it's going to speed you up. I think this is probably my most interesting of the new cards, although Tide Pools is also pretty interesting. Um, Blockade. Yeah, Blockade might slow the games down more than Embargo did because it's actually a deterrent, and you can move around with it more than with Embargo. I don't know. And then Astrolabe, you have more games with plus buy. You have more games with plus buy. That's probably more of a building thing, but you just, so I think overall games will be a little bit faster, and yeah, that Ambassador and Ghost Ship are gone will be important. Um, but you know, in the 2% of games they showed up in. So that's my thoughts. Thanks for watching. you get some videos with these cards vaguely soon. Leave your comments, etc., etc. Wandering Winder out.